When steam ruled, thunder raced down the rails in a trail of white mist. Learn how steam locomotives worked, what they could do, and why America wouldn't be without them. The steam locomotive on Trains Unlimited, next. A long time ago, before diesels pulled America's trains, a different kind of locomotive ruled the rails. They hissed, they rumbled, and they roared. They belched smoke and spewed clouds of white mist. And if you stood next to one and felt the warmth of its boiler and heard its mysterious sounds, you would swear it was alive. Steam power allowed the development of mechanized railroading back in the 19th century, and it reigned supreme until the more labor-efficient and economical internal combustion engine took its place in the 1950s.
Steam engine developed this country from nothing to what it is. They opened up the whole country to anybody that needed it, that wanted to go anywhere, or carry anything, or move anything. When you talk about diesels versus steam, the diesel can be standing still and still look like it's going fast, where the steam engine is making the smoke and steam, and the connecting rods are flying, and the wheels are turning. The steam engine is made for pictures.
The American steam age peaked in the mid-1920s and came to a close in 1960. By that year, 27,000 diesels had replaced the 40,000 steam locomotives operating on mainline rails at the end of World War II. Most of those steam engines went to the scrapyard. Some were preserved in museums and park displays, but some were given new lives on short line and tourist railroads, like Steamtown National Historic Site in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Here, the machines breathe, move, whistle sounds. You can tell an engineer by the quill or the signature of his whistle. You see railroad men as they work about them. It is railroading as it existed 30 to 40 years ago.
There's a lot less romance in a diesel locomotive. People don't write songs about them, don't write poems about them, whereas steam locomotives have this attraction to everyone. Wherever we go with a steam engine, crowds come out to see it.
Before steam power was harnessed by the railroads for commerce and profit, and romanticized by poets, it was simply energy being transferred as heated water molecules expanded. The concept of steam power was demonstrated by a Greek named Hero of Alexandria in the year 130 BC. His engine consisted of a hollow metal ball mounted on tubes rising from a boiler. Steam from the boiler passed through the ball and escaped through opposing tubes, causing the ball to spin. In 1687, Sir Isaac Newton's laws of motion explained how Hero's engine worked. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. By 1712, Another Englishman named Thomas Newcomen had put science into action. He built a piston-driven steam engine to pump water out of coal mines. In 1769, Scottish engineer James Watt perfected Newcomen's idea and patented the first efficient steam engine. The era of steam power was born. Horse-powered tramways had long been used in England to pull mining carts. In 1804, inventor Richard Trevithick harnessed steam power and built the very first locomotive to run on rails.
His track consisted of kind of plates of iron laid on the ground and bolted together. Didn't stand up very well to the heavy locomotive. Later, Trevithick demonstrated a couple of variations of his locomotive, in fact, in a little park in London, and gave rides. But about the only place that locomotives actually took on was in the coal mines. So for about 20 years, that was the only place you saw them.
Heavy boilers and inadequate track hampered the success of the earliest locomotives. But by 1825, commercial railroading was off and running in England. It would take off in the United States by 1829.
Sturbridge Line has the honor of being the first locomotive ever to run in the Western Hemisphere. And it was imported from England, ran for a couple of days, actually, only up in northeastern Pennsylvania. And then the project that the locomotive was supposed to serve was reconsidered, and the locomotive was abandoned, basically. It had already been rendered obsolete by the Rocket. The Rocket was a locomotive built by Robert Stephenson and basically simplified the machinery enormously. It had a form that basically set the pattern for the rest of the steam era.
The basic operation of piston-driven steam locomotives has remained the same since the 1800s. Steam locomotives burn fuel in their firebox to create heat. A sheath of water surrounds the firebox where boiling water makes steam. Exhaust gases exit the firebox through tubes into a smoke box and then up the smokestack. The boiler tubes are also sheathed in water to help create more steam. The steam is channeled through valves to the steam cylinders. Expanding steam pushes pistons in these cylinders like burning gasoline does in internal combustion engines. The pistons push long bars called main rods, which turn the driving wheels. As the wheels rotate, timing rods reverse the flow of steam in the cylinders, causing the pistons to retract, completing the cycle. The exhaust steam exits through the smoke box, mixes with the fire exhaust, and both shoot up the stack. The draft they create pulls more air into the firebox, making the fire burn hotter, generating even more steam and more power. The cycle repeats faster and faster as the locomotive accelerates. Just like a car or truck, a steam locomotive works most efficiently when it's up to speed. They're huge and they're lumbering, but the basic mechanical workings of a steam locomotive are as precise as a fine pocket watch. And unlike cars, boats, planes, and rockets, steam locomotives are the only transportation vehicle where most of the moving parts are on the outside.
You just don't go to any store and buy the parts for this locomotive. You have to take care of what you got. Every single part that's on these locomotives have to be machined and made. They cannot be bought. It makes them a little bit expensive, but we realize this and we try to take the best care of it we know how. Here we have a good running locomotive and we'd like to keep it that way.
In today's world, the machines of our convenience are started up with the turn of a key, the twist of a knob, or the flick of a switch. Operating a steam locomotive has never been easy.
really takes a high degree of physical ability and mental agility, both, to be able to handle these locomotives. It requires a great deal of experience and study, a lot of hard work, and frankly, one has to be in fairly decent physical condition to be able to do this job also.
The small pile of embers left burning in the firebox overnight is spread out to help ignite fresh coal. Rods and wheels and fittings are tapped and turned and inspected to ensure safe operation. Joints are greased and bearings lubricated. Only then can the engine begin to move. Spent coals are dumped from the ash pan. Fresh coal and water are added to the tender. And when the engine's up to steam and the crew has its operating orders,
Car to go, 26.
the locomotive is coupled to its train.
3.2.
I had to volunteer and work hard to get this position at Steamtown. I'm interested in old steam engines, and my dad also worked on the Western Maryland. Makes me feel good and makes me feel like I'm a part of history along with it.
America's earliest locomotives were British-made, like the John Bull. As American technology and design improved, so did the locomotives built here. A hugely successful domestic engine began appearing in 1836. It was called, appropriately, the American-type locomotive. Locomotive types are designated by their wheel arrangement. This had a 440 wheel arrangement. 4 guiding pilot wheels helped keep the engine on rickety American track. 4 larger driving wheels provided the power. Later locomotives had more driving wheels and eventually added trailing wheels to help support the growing weight of bigger engines.
During that critical period in the development of railroading, that was the engine that did all the work. Metallurgy and engineering was such that that was as big a boiler as they could build. And toward the end of the 19th century, as the engineers were able to build a bigger boiler, they put more wheels underneath it, and that's when we broke away from the 440 and you began to see much larger steam locomotives. But the 440 was the great classic steam engine of the 1800s.
The 440 American-type locomotive continued to be built until 1928. The earliest models started at 50 horsepower, but evolved to over 500 horsepower. The lightest weighed 32 tons, and the heaviest over 87 tons. In all, over 26,000 were made. Three basic types of fuel have powered steam locomotives through the years. Coal was used in regions where it was plentiful. Many railroads used various grades of soft bituminous coal. A few in Pennsylvania used hard anthracite coal, which produced virtually no smoke, but which required a larger firebox because it burned more slowly. Most early railroads, including many western roads, burned wood. Trees were abundant, making fuel equally plentiful. If you ran out of fuel, you could ask a nearby farmer for firewood. Wood burners had large diamond-shaped smokestacks. The metal plates and screens inside of them helped retard hot flying embers. Diesel locomotives burn oil, as did many of the later steam engines. Oil was easier to store and load, and was more readily available, especially in Texas and other western states. Oil burns without creating abrasive cinders and leaves no ash behind. Often, coal-burning locomotives were converted to oil by railroads anxious to save time and money.
In the development of locomotives, the idea was always to build a locomotive that could more effectively and more powerfully haul more stuff a greater distance.
Locomotives grew in size as better track and inventions like reliable air brakes allowed longer trains of heavier cars. Growth was always a priority on the railroads.
When did steam locomotives get big, black, and ugly? Well, they got big and enormous in the latter part of the 19th century as the trains that had to be pulled got much heavier. Trains became the most popular way to travel. And so I'd say the major change was simply in the growth and capacity of the steam locomotives, which climaxed basically in the 1920s.
A major locomotive innovation arrived with the 20th century. It was called superheating. Lengths of steam tubing were added to engine boilers to supercharge the steam waiting to feed the main cylinders. Superheater tubing ran through the exhaust flues, giving the hot gases from the fire one last opportunity to raise the temperature and pressure of the steam. More heat in the steam translated into 1/3 more power from the same boiler. Another major innovation was called Superpower from Ohio's Lima Locomotive Works. Its principal concept was to enlarge a locomotive's fuel-burning firebox and produce a greater quantity of steam faster. More steam meant more power. It required adding an additional pair of trailing wheels to the locomotive to support the extra weight of the larger firebox. Entire new types of locomotives evolved out of this 1925 technology. The 282 Mikado became a 284 Berkshire. A 462 Pacific was now a 464 Hudson. And 482 Mountain types evolved into 484 Northerns. Railroads were America's first big business, and it seemed like somebody was always coming up with a new technological innovation to make railroading simpler, safer, or just cheaper. One of these entrepreneurs was an African-American engineer named Elijah McCoy.
It's sometimes said that the phrase, the real McCoy, came from a device that he invented, a little device that lets metered amounts of lubrication go to critical parts on the locomotive. What McCoy did was to improve on existing designs to make a much more effective and a much more economical lubricator, a much more reliable one. And it's said that railroad crews preferred his type and began calling it the real McCoy. He later went on to become a recognized international expert in the lubrication of every kind of industrial machinery.
McCoy was one of the many brilliant minds who fired the drive to bring steam locomotion to the forefront of its time. To some people, the city of Chicago is railroading in America. Tracks lead in and out of every corner of the city, and freight yards dot its suburbs. 50 miles northwest of Chicago, much of the city's transportation past is preserved at the Illinois Railway Museum. Its volunteers salvage and restore anything from subway and trolley cars to diesel switchers. But when the public visits, people always want to ride the steam train.
I've always loved trains. I grew up alongside the Wabash Railroad in Springfield, Illinois. And there's a basic honesty about the machines. They are built for a specific purpose. They do that purpose extremely well. My real-world job, I'm a trial attorney in Chicago, but at least one day a weekend, sometimes two, I come out here. This is my mental therapy. Out here, it's just working on the railroad.
The museum holds over 350 historical pieces of equipment, housed in over a dozen sheds and barns. They'd like to be able to restore every single piece.
restoring and operating the equipment is all volunteer work. The effort that would go into restoring just a simple passenger car might be 10 or 15 years of work. A steam locomotive might take a decade or more to rebuild from the ground up. The work that goes into rebuilding or even just maintaining an operating steam locomotive or an operating streetcar is dirty, filthy, terribly hard physically, sometimes terribly depressing because you build something and fix it and the part right next to it breaks. And that happens fairly often. And you get a little disgusted at times. But eventually, after many years, you have a piece of machinery that's living history, something that your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents may have ridden on, is back live again, back on the rails, with new generations of people coming out to see it.
The largest working steam locomotive at the museum is a 210 dating back to 1918. Locomotives that got much bigger began facing certain operating problems. In 1889, Frenchman Anatole Mallet devised a solution to a growing problem. Locomotives couldn't easily steer around curves in the track beyond a certain length. Rather than powering 5 or 6 pair of driving wheels attached to the same frame with 1 pair of cylinders, Mallet hinged the frame and created a flexible locomotive. He built the boiler and 1 set of driving wheels on the back. He then installed a 2nd set of cylinders and driving wheels on the independent front frame, allowing the whole locomotive to bend through a curve. What he had was 2 engines under 1 boiler. Mallet, or articulated locomotives, came in 2 varieties. Simple articulated meant that the boiler supplied steam to 2 sets of equal-sized cylinders. Compound articulateds had larger-sized cylinders in the front and small ones in back. The compound design allowed hot steam straight from the boiler to power the regular-sized rear cylinders. The steam expelled from these would then be sent to the larger front cylinders. Their extra size compensated for the reduced pressure of the second-hand steam they utilized. Recycling the system had its benefits, but other drawbacks to the compound cylinder system limited the locomotive's success. But simple articulateds like the 2666 Alleghenies and 4884 Big Boys enjoyed productive careers hauling millions of tons of freight for up to 20 years. Still another way locomotive builders tried to squeeze every ounce of power out of conventional steam was by adding 3rd cylinders between the locomotive's driving wheels. Maintaining the inside cylinder was a nightmare, so their popularity with the railroads never soared. Early steam development was fueled by the simple desire to build a bigger beast. But with increasing competition from cost and labor-efficient diesels in the 40s and 50s, steam evolution became a fight for steam survival. Perhaps the most unusual steam locomotives that ever evolved were the steam turbines. Turbine-driven pistonless units that either generated electricity to run traction motors or were directly geared to the wheels themselves. In 1938, General Electric built 2 steam turbine electrics attempting to compete with Electromotive Corporation's diesel electrics. They were scrapped within 5 years. The Pennsylvania Railroad experimented with a direct drive steam turbine in the 40s, and in 1947, the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad acquired 3 steam turbine electrics. Their turbines were rated at 6,000 horsepower, and they were billed as the world's largest single-unit passenger locomotives. But continual breakdowns did them in. They too were scrapped in 1950. The final steam turbine of note belonged to steam railroading's last major line, the Norfolk and Western. Number 2300, the John Henry, weighed over 800,000 pounds. It was built in 1954. Though it was successful, it was too big and came too late, and like all of its turbine predecessors, was scrapped in just a few years. Steam turbines worked well in clean, stable environments like boats and power plants, but they couldn't hold up to the dirt, dust, and physical pounding railroad locomotives faced day after day. The growing benefits of diesel locomotives were rapidly closing the curtain on the steam era. Diesel's brightly painted colors were practically synonymous with the bright future they promised the rails. People tended to think of steam engines as black and sooty, but some were colorful and quite stunning. The Southern Railway's crescents were green and gorgeous. Santa Fe's Blue Goose was sky blue. And Southern Pacific's classy Daylights were called the most beautiful trains in the world. They ran from San Francisco to Southern California. Maybe that's why they were sunny orange. Not every steam engine was black, and even the ones that were remained majestically handsome, until the railroads dropped their fire for the last time.
My grandfather used to fire part-time on the Cotton Belt Railroad. Today, I fire. One of my best friends in far southern Illinois was a fireman on the Illinois Central. In fact, he fired the last live steam locomotive on the Illinois Central. When I last saw him several years ago, he's now well into his 80s. He handed me his fireman's scoop that he used on that last run and said, this should go from one fireman to another. We're keeping that alive. And that's part of the charm. That's what draws me to this.
Cheyenne, Wyoming sits on the high plains in the southeast corner of this wind-blown state. It was once a hub of activity on the Union Pacific Railroad. In its own way, the Cheyenne Yard still is. The Union Pacific is the only major American railroad that maintains an active steam program. And its steam operations are based here in Cheyenne.
This is like running a dinosaur farm. Nobody else does this. No other railroad does this. Trying to maintain 1940s machines in 1990 and have them operate reliably, find parts for them, make parts for them, whatever, and keep the skills alive is a tremendous challenge.
Unlike a park or museum, the UP Steam Shop is part of a working railroad and not open to the public. Instead, Steve Lee and his crew take the locomotives out to the public on scheduled excursions throughout Union Pacific territory.
It's a lot of fun taking this thing around and making people happy. You don't see very many frowns around this thing. And a lot of people enjoy seeing these. It brings back memories for a lot of people. For most people, it's something they've never seen before or may never see again. But it's a unique machine.
The 4664 Challenger type engine number 3985 is the largest operating steam locomotive in the world. It was recommissioned and restored in 1981, and while number 3985 is currently being rebuilt, it's toured the country as a public relations ambassador, pulling excursion specials and occasionally working freight trains. Challengers were designed in the 30s as dual-service locomotives to pull both passenger and freight trains over an 11-year period 252 were built. The first of them and greatest number went to the Union Pacific, who reportedly named them after the challenging assignments they faced in Utah's Wasatch Mountains.
You had locomotives that were built specifically for hauling passenger trains at high speeds, and you had locomotives that were specifically built for hauling heavy freight trains at slow speeds. The Challengers were designed to fit in between there. They had large boilers, they had high boiler pressure, they had 12 driving wheels, and they were articulated so they could go around sharp curves. So a heavy passenger train that would require maybe 2 or 3 locomotives in mountain territory, one Challenger could handle.
They were so successful that they became the last steam locomotives regularly operated on the Union Pacific right up to 1959. They even outlasted the famous Big Boy locomotive, which the later version of the Challenger was redesigned after. The two locomotive types frequently worked in tandem, pulling heavy trains across the Wasatch into Ogden, Utah.
The two designs are very similar, and the locomotives were designed to work together, to work hand in hand. The original idea was that the 4000, the Big Boy, would handle the train up the heaviest grades, and at the top of the heavy grade, it would surrender the train to the Challenger, and then it would go back and get another heavy train, and the Challenger would take that same train that the 4000 had and carry it across the prairies. And that was the initial way they were used, and it worked out very well. They complemented each other.
The UP Steam program's other locomotive is their newly refurbished number 844. And for now, with her sister down for repairs, she's the star of the Union Pacific show. This particular 484 Northern type bears a unique distinction. It's the only steam locomotive on a major railroad that has never been pulled out of active service. The Santa Fe Railroad owned the largest 484s, but no other individual standard gauge locomotive has been working longer than number 844.
The pinnacle of passenger locomotives, in my opinion, is the 484. There were 484s built for freight service, but the ones built for passenger or general service, you generally had a boiler that ran at 300 pounds boiler pressure or thereabouts. You had a very large firebox. You generally had 75 to 80-inch drivers, maybe even a little bit bigger. They were easy on track, easy riding. Nobody knows how fast they'd go. And they pulled big trains. They were easy to maintain, economical to operate. They were a tremendous locomotive. But when the 484 came out, that's pretty much when the evolution of the steam engine stopped. And everybody's energies and research and development started going into diesels. So I can look at a 484 and say that's the state of the art, but we got to remember that the art stopped about the mid-1930s, late 1930s.
Just weeks after undergoing a 2-year-long refurbishing, number 844 was called to some unusual duty in November of 1996. A freight train climbing up Archer Hill outside Cheyenne lost power in one of its 3 locomotives. The train stalled. Number 844 was only minutes behind it on the same track returning from an excursion. Calling in a backup helper diesel for the freight train would have been too time-consuming and would have tied up traffic both east and westbound for hours. Bob Krieger, the engineer that day on number 844, got on the radio and offered his assistance. The train dispatcher knew what was going on, but it wasn't until 844 was pushing him that the engineer of the stalled train realized his modern diesels were being nursed back to the shop by a 1940 steam engine. On that crisp fall day on the Wyoming plains, justice was served on behalf of boilermakers, pipe fitters, and plain old steam lovers the world over. In 1960, America elected its youngest president. Youth and hopefulness captured the public spirit. On the rails, shiny new diesels had put tired old steam out of business. By 1960, Michigan's Grand Trunk Western was the last major railroad to pull steam out of scheduled passenger service. Steam freight made its last stand on Virginia's Norfolk and Western. One man chronicled its disappearance. New York commercial photographer O. Winston Link loved trains and had worked on many industrial projects related to the railroads.
For years I had been wanting to photograph railroads at night because it had never been done. And there's so much you can do with lighting at night that you can't do in the daytime. You can control the light and emphasize whatever you want to emphasize. At night, you have complete control regardless of the weather, regardless of raining and snowing or anything else. You have complete control of everything. Well, it was tough to do. What I realized was, and what I wanted to do was to show the life along the railroad and what the people were like, what the stores were like. The railroad went down the main street. My God, there's got to be stuff there that you don't see. You don't see in the daytime. Finally, they got to I was seeing headlines in magazines and newspapers that one railroad after another had lost steam, so I decided I had to do something. I was being forced into it, that there was no more waiting.
The Norfolk and Western was highly regarded for its steam. They were steadfastly dedicated to it, primarily because their main business was hauling coal. Locomotives built in the Norfolk and Western shops were among the finest and most technologically advanced in the world. Link started to photograph the Norfolk and Western at night, using massive banks of flashbulbs to stop the action. He often captured man and machine working together for the last time.
One night we had 3 trains coming through at this same location, all within a few minutes of each other. And the problems I had trying to get my bulbs changed, because for every picture sometimes there were 30 or 40 flash bulbs on each shot. But it was sure worth it, and the first picture was just right, excellent. Just one negative. The train was moving. You couldn't change films and change bulbs and do anything about it. You had to get it on the first shot.
Winston Link's astonishing photographs are among the most striking visual records in railroading. But many people don't realize he also made audio recordings, capturing the sounds of steam giants as they thundered through Virginia's mountains.
One of the favorite locations was on Blue Ridge. This is the crest of the grade from Roanoke over the mountains, down the other side of the mountains on the way to the coast. And there's a grade there that just was magnificent. They had most of the time 2 big engines on the head end, and it was just great for recording. And there was a house there that could plug into, or made a deal with a woman to buy the electricity to run the recorder. Gave her $1 or something like that. It wasn't a bad deal for either one of us. And she thought I was stealing everything. And right in the middle of the recording, she'd pull the plug off the wall and leave me there with no current right when the train was coming by. Several times she did that. And she went away for the weekend, and we brought in fuses, and she'd take the fuse out. So we put in our own fuses and take all the current we wanted on Saturdays and Sundays.
Like every other major railroad, the Norfolk and Western realized that dieselization was in their future too. They just resisted change longer than the others did.
They were definitely brokenhearted that they lost steam engines. Everybody I talked to loved them, and I talked to an awful lot of people.
No one paid Winston Link to document the Norfolk and Western. He did it on his own time, at his own expense, solely to save a small piece of a disappearing era. Many of his photographs sat in a vault for 30 years. Today, his original prints sell for thousands of dollars. The most famous one is called Drive-In. As the jet age raced in, the puffing iron horse took its final exit screen right. Some pictures are worth 1,000 words. Photographs like Winston Link's and parks like Steamtown preserve a vanished sliver of America. Ironically, many of the operating locomotives at Steamtown are Canadian. The United States Congress established Steamtown National Historic Site in 1986 to help preserve and interpret America's steam legacy. By that time in rail history, most of the available serviceable or economically salvageable steam locomotives in North America existed outside of the United States. King Steam disappeared from mainline railroading by 1960, but tucked away in mountain canyons and puffing through municipal parks, some type of steam locomotive has operated in America since 1829. Over 115 parks, museums, narrow gauge, and tourist railroads currently operate steam locomotives in the United States alone, and over a dozen more do in Canada.
The most endearing thing to me about a locomotive is it's alive. It is the most alive machine I've ever worked with. It has a personality, and every locomotive has a different personality. Its personality changes from minute to minute. It makes noises. It sounds like it's breathing and groaning and talking to you. And all the while, you got to listen to what it's saying, because if you don't, it's going to end up laughing at you and making a fool out of you. I say it with a smile, but everybody who's worked with locomotives, steam locomotives in particular, realizes you have good days and you have bad days, but it's all fun.
Lucky I am to be able to run a steam locomotive. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would have an opportunity to run one of these fine locomotives. I just find myself extremely fortunate to be a small part of it.
At Steamtown, visitors tour historical exhibits, watch men and women service locomotives, ask questions, and many become wide-eyed as they take their first trip on a real steam train. To them, concepts like drawbar horsepower and boiler pressure don't matter. They're having fun and getting to relive a little history. Whether they realize it or not, they're experiencing firsthand the technology that allowed America to reach across a continent and become an industrial giant. Every technology is eventually replaced by a new and better one, but few have captured hearts and minds like steam locomotion. You need only ask the volunteers at Steamtown as they put away their engines for the night and prepare for the eager crowds who'll come to ride and marvel tomorrow.